Welcome back, Math 2. Today we are going to learn how to simplify a radical without necessarily needing to just type it into our calculators. Okay, so first off, a radical, I'm sure you've seen the symbol before. It's really a square root. The reason we call it a radical instead of a square root is you can have different types of roots. You can have cube roots, fourth roots, whatever, and we will get into that later on this semester. So for now, you can consider it a square root. Okay. Now there are some numbers that already have nice even square roots. And by even, I just mean that if you type square root of whatever this number is into your calculator, you will get a whole number out. You will not get a decimal. Okay. So we are going to make a poster that will be up around the room with like the first 20 square numbers. It's really good for you to at least have the first 10 memorized. It's really important. So 1 has a square root. Its square root is just 1. 4 has a square root of 2. 9 has a square root of 3. 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, and 100. Okay, so these are my square numbers. If you want to underneath write like what their square root is, that's good. Okay. All right, but these numbers in the first column, first row, those are our big ticket numbers. We really want to pay attention to those. It is good to know the ones beyond 100, but we'll get to that later. Okay. So for those numbers that are not 136, all those, instead of using a decimal, once we get into this level of math, we want what's called an exact answer. Now, there are times where a decimal or an approximation is a little more useful or a little more relevant, but I want you to be aware that this is how some answers are going to be written, and I want to make sure you understand how to do it. Okay. So let's do some examples. We'll start with some smaller numbers. And basically, what our steps are going to be is that we want to find the largest square number that goes into whatever our number is. So it goes into the number, I guess. Okay. And then we are going to simplify. Okay. So let's try it with some smaller numbers first. Okay. And I'll probably be moving up and down a lot so we can see that list of square numbers, but hopefully you already wrote it. Okay. So my first one, I'm going to do the square root of 12. Okay. So 12 is not listed up here. It's between 9 and 16, but 12 itself does not have a pretty square root. In fact, if you were to type it into your calculator, the square root of 12 is like 3.4641, and it just keeps going on because it's an irrational number. Okay, but I do know that there are some square numbers that multiply into 12, and the largest one that goes into 12 is, what is this? Go away. Is 4. Stop. Okay. Is 4. Okay. So I'm going to write this kind of like a factor tree. I'm like, okay, I know that 4 times 3 makes 12, and 4 is a square number. Yay! Okay. So I'm going to rewrite this as the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. I'm keeping everything in square roots so I know what I've simplified and what I haven't. So right now all I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, 12 and 4 times 3 are the same thing. They're equal. Okay. Now 3 does not have a square root, so it's probably as simplified as it can get. Most of our answers today are going to have a regular number and a number inside a square root. Okay. But I know that 4 does have a square root, and its square root is 2. Okay. So a square root is an operation. It's something you're doing to a number. So my final answer here, I'm going to write it underneath, is going to be 2 square root 3. Because I was able to simplify the 4, but the 3 can't. It can't break down anymore, so we're going to leave it. So instead of writing square root of 12 or 3.46410, blah, 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 we are going to write 2 square root of 3. This is called an exact answer. Okay. Let's try another one. Maybe that has. Let's do the square root of 45. That's a good one. Okay. Now 45, that's pretty close to a number that has a square root, 49, but it doesn't. So we're going to look at different options. What does 45 break into? So some factors of 45 are like 3 and 15, but neither 3 or 15 have a square root. So we want a number from up here, from our first row, that goes into 45, and the only one I can think of is 9. Okay, so 45 breaks into 9 times 5. So I'm going to rewrite 45 as 9 times 5. Okay. Now again, 5 does not have a square root. It's going to stay inside a square root, inside a radical. But the square root of 9 does simplify. The square root of 9 is 3. So my answer is going to be 3 square root of 5. Let's try one more. Let's try a really big one that you probably don't know all the factors of off the top of your head, and that's okay. I want to show you some options of how we can do this. Okay, so we are going to do the square root of 252. Okay, square root of 252. Okay, now even me, do not know what goes into 252. It's such a large number. I don't know why you would know that. But what we are going to do is maybe make a little list. We're going to start by just dividing 252 divided by 2. Okay, so 2 and 126. Okay, now 2 or 126, I don't think 126 has a square root. You can always check that with your calculator. It does not. So we're going to have to go deeper. So let's try 252. And here's the other thing. Now that we know that 126 is half of 252, I'm going to look at my square numbers. I know I have to be under 252, so I can try dividing by other things like 100, which I should know, won't go into it. But then I'll move on to 81. So 252 divided by 81 does not come out. Oops, hold on. Does not come out even. 252 divided by 64. Nope. 252 divided by 49. Nope. How about 252 divided by 36? Ooh, yes, that came out to be an even number. Hopefully you have a calculator and are trying this too. So I then tried, just so you have it in your notes, I tried dividing by 100. I divided by 81. I'm dividing by the square number so I can find the biggest one that goes into it. So that didn't work, that didn't work, that didn't work, that didn't work. But I can divide by 36 and I get 7. Okay, so those are going to be my two numbers that I simplify 252 into. 36 times 7. And that way, maybe there are other square numbers that go into it, but I know for sure I got the biggest square number and I don't have to do extra work. 7 does not have a square root and it's a prime number, so it doesn't break down anymore. But the square root of 36 is 6. So my answer is going to be 6 times the square root of 7.